NXT ROADBLOCK, March 5th, 2024, here on Tap Out Talk. I'm your host, Bryan, the Hype Ballard, and we're going to go over all the highlights and delights of ROADBLOCK 2024. Every once in a while, NXT, we get a show that's not necessarily a PLE, but it is a themed show of the week. The narrative is to push ahead on the road to WrestleMania without any roadblocks, and hopefully it speeds up the storylines that we want to lead to at Stand and Deliver. Now, my question for you guys is just remember, as you're going through this, when you watch NXT, my request is, this is development territory. 2 out of 5 of these stars will not make it on the main roster. Keep that in mind. This is training in progress. Without further ado, let's get in. First up, we have the Asylum match with Donovan Dijak versus Joe Gacy. It's a good match to start this show out with on Tuesday night. I felt like it was it was a good way for the crew to set up the ring. Asylum match, if you don't know, is a steel cage match with weapons. All kinds of weapons, really no rules to what the weapons are. A couple things I liked here. I liked that they started the show off with that. It got the crowd going. It got the ring crew an easy setup and takedown. That way they didn't have to kind of mess with it throughout the night. But ultimately, this was a return bout for Gacy and Dijak to up the ante a little bit from their previous bout. So what we end up having is Gacy comes out of the gates right away and he hits a fire extinguisher and picks that up, and Dijak ends up picking up a chair and he starts to swing it at Gacy. There's a Death Valley driver, a cover for a 1 and a 2. Don goes after a crate that reads "Do not open" that's in the ring. So Dijak goes after that. He goes after the crate, but Joe cuts him off and throws him into a steel steps for a few times. And then back to the crate. Dijak opens it. He gets punched right in the stomach by a boxing glove that comes right up out of the crate. That's why it says "Do not open." So kind of a fun spot there. I actually kind of enjoyed it. We have a fire extinguisher again, a Death Valley driver from Gacy, and we actually end up getting a little bit of a break here, but then we come back from commercial and Dijak perched on top of the steel cage, and he pulls a Kurt Angle moonsault from the top of the cage, but Gacy kicks out of the pin, putting Joe into at this point. That was just an amazing move for a big man such as Dijak. And I tell you what, as the weeks go on, and the more I watch Dijak, the more I realize I'm starting to like his wrestling. I'm starting to like his work. Gacy would go on through the rest of the match on this, but it wouldn't be long. So once we do get the duct tape on the eyes, blindfolding Gacy, he whacks him with a kendo stick. He's looking for a side Russian leg sweep, but Joe kicks him low, and then he hits a move, and then still nothing. Gacy whips him with a stick, but Dijak throws it through the door. It's not enough. Then we get a feast your eyes, but Joe pops right back up, and I almost wonder if Joe did not realize that was supposed to be the end of the match there. But then again, they go right for a second feast your eyes, and at that point, we get Dijak hits him for the 1, the 2, and the 3 in the win with the second feast your eyes in this matchup. So again, fun matchup. It didn't outstay its welcome. It was about 15 minutes in length, and I will say this, it was actually ended at the appropriate time. They could have went a little longer and I wouldn't have minded. However, the crowd just started getting really hot, started getting into it and chanting, and then they went right to the ending. So I thought that was actually a good way to pass the torch to the next match. But just in case they weren't sure what they wanted to do in that next match, we went ahead and set up with a backstage segment where we see Adriana Rizzo give Tony D'Angelo a pep talk, and Channing Stacks Lorenzo comes in to join her. Tony says that he's got a title in his sights, and he welcomes Luca Crucifino into the room. Tony D says, hey, he's no BS. He needs another member of the family, and he's going to be the most dominant force in NXT. And Luca says he's in. They shake hands, and then they're good. Then we get another backstage with Fallon Henley chatting Riley Osborne backstage, and she thanks him for talking to Thea Hale from Chase U. She says that Thea got some bad advice and Blair Davenport then comes up on the two of them talking and mocks her. Blair didn't do like the best on her interviews there. I think that's still something they're working on with her, but you know, the facial expressions is going to be important for her to develop. They tell her to stay out of other people's business. We go to another break, and then Lyra Valkyrie is getting ready when Tatum Paxley comes in, and they get a little weird with each other. Valkyrie then reminds her that she needs to be realistic and remember why they have more of a professional relationship. Tatum then says that they're going to win tonight, and she'll do anything when she's champion. She'll journey to the farthest, darkest, and take her opponent's souls out until they're screaming in agony. Hey guys, real quick, just want to say thank you for hitting that like button on this video. It helps my channel out so much. I do appreciate that. And you guys can connect with me over at Twitter or X at the Bryan Adkins. And then we host, Twitter Spaces weekly, and we talk. And you just talk with other wrestling fans and other like-minded people. Let's get in with that. Moving ahead and getting in, we now have the Tag Team NXT Tag Team Championships up for grabs, where the Wolf Dogs are going to take on Chase U. I feel like Chase U always gets tag team title opportunities, which tells me that there's not too many tag teams in NXT currently. Chase U consists tonight of Andrew Chase and Duke Hudson, and of course the Wolf Dogs are Baron Corbin and Bron Breakker defending. It's interesting to see that Bron Breakker and Baron Corbin are being used in the Tag Team Championship role in NXT. I think it's due for a couple of reasons. I believe personally that Bron Breakker is being primed and prepped for a huge push in the main roster. And I think they're getting him, he's already on the main roster, made his debut, had a great matchup on Friday. However, I do feel he's going to be a dominant singles performer at first, but they're getting him some tag team, ultimately some tag team training down in NXT with Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin has kind of become the trainer of some of these new guys in a way. But ultimately, I do believe Bron Breakker will do something big on the main roster. So, we start with a shove and a taunt from Baron. Andre Chase takes him right down into a schoolboy for a 1 and a 2. There's a shoulder block off the back ropes, a back suplex lift into a face buster. Breakker tags in off the ropes, a shoulder block fired up, and then we get assisted gut buster. Hudson breaks it up for the match, breaks down. Chase then gets a kick on the apron. They go further and they flip and they flop and they fly all around the ring. And then at this point, we get some blind tags mixed in. And then we get a boss man slam later on in the match. Corbin comes in with a side slam for a 1 and a 2. Match breaks down, trading punches. Chase knees Breakker onto the floor. Baron hip tosses them into the turnbuckles. We get a hip toss to the floor and an uppercut, throwing Bron into the steel steps. Andre back up top, diving crossbody, but no, not enough. Super kick, Corbin falls into a tag, and Bron takes the advantage. The Wolf Dogs win and defend their championships by pinfall with a spear from Bron Breakker and a hot finish on Andrew Chase, retaining the NXT championships. Post-match, Thea Hale goes crazy because Chase U didn't get the job done, and she runs off, and we don't really know what that's about until later. We then get a backstage segment. This time it's Carmelo Hayes interviewed backstage with a row of security guards and tactical, shield-like vests behind them. And their faces are covered in masks to not reveal the identities. He is asked whenever he's back down from a fight, and he much less already agreed to the Tony D'Angelo fight, will come out and do what he does and make the Rent-A-Cop security disappear, which is why they hired the handpicked security to protect him. That NXT Championship is reserved for the biggest stars in NXT, and there's none bigger than him. He's the one man that's going to make history on back-to-back Stand and Delivers because he is him. Not a bad segment to hype up the night's event, tell the story, kind of allude to Trick Williams coming back. Ultimately, then we get Shawn Spears walking backstage, and they send us to break, but they come right back, and we get Shawn Spears in his first match in a re-debut in NXT. Shawn Spears, you might have remembered, is Ty Dillinger in his past run in WWE. The Perfect 10. He is no more. I like this darker, edgier version of Shawn Spears. Using the Japanese proverb of a man has 3 sides. A side that his family knows, a side that his job knows, and a side that is just true evil. You guys, all I remember was predicting, a lot of you guys were predicting, it's Okada, it's got to be Okada. And I remember weeks ago I said, why can't it be Shawn Spears in a package and a re-gimmick? And I was happy to be correct in that. Shawn Spears is the man behind those interesting, flashes and glimpses and vignettes that we've been getting. He made his debut attacking Ridge Holland previously, the week before, and now he's got his first match against a debuting Uriah Connors. Uriah Connors was a interesting choice here, making his debut. Shawn Spears versus Uriah Connors kicks in. There is a perfect 10 chant that starts in the crowd. However, it kind of dies down pretty quickly. And then at this point, we get a very quick match. You get Shawn Spears whispering into Uriah Connors' ear, which fires Uriah Connors up a little bit more, playing the mind games. And then at this point, Uriah Connors is actually brutally attacked by Shawn Spears and finished off fairly quickly. I thought that was a great way for Shawn Spears, the veteran, to give Uriah Connors a little bit of a direction in the ring as far as what they want to do in this quick squash match. I will say, though, I want to give Uriah Connors a little bit of credit here and say that he did a good job for what he was supposed to do as enhancement talent. And he did his job of selling and making Shawn Spears look really good in the ring. So I will be interested to kind of see where his career goes and a little bit more on his offense when he wrestles next. I may actually go in and kind of dig into it. Friend of the channel here, and a friend of mine, is Nasty Leroy. It's one of his guys that, he's pretty friends with. So I may kind of zoom in a little bit on Uriah Connors due to his connection to Leroy. So interesting on that. Ultimately, then post-match, Spears gets on the mic and he talks and does a promo where his face is half lit. I like that narrative. And then he gets on the mic and he talks about how fake hypocrites and calls Ridge Holland out. Enter Ridge Holland coming out and looking crazy, and we got referees in the ring. And Spears is doing the Bray Wyatt, just sitting and hitting me with the chair, sacrificing himself. But Ridge doesn't do it. Throws the chair down after being prompted by the referees, and they talk to him. And Ridge leaves with his head in his hands as Spears just is laughing in the ring. I like that Shawn Spears was able to re-debut in NXT as Shawn Spears. The character he's been working as the chairman in AEW for the past few years. So I like the fact that when a guy can re-debut under his current gimmick because he's familiar with the fans. I do like the choice of putting him down in NXT. I'll be interested to see what they do with it. I will say I could see Shawn Spears getting a bit of a muscle man in his corner, and that could be Ridge Holland that eventually takes sides with Spears as Spears beats him and forces him to kind of join him. So I could see a little bit of that. Joe Gacy would be an interesting, aspect. But I do have one person I would not mind seeing if he was available to back up Shawn Spears, and that would be Parker Bourgeau. I think that could be a nice re-debut in NXT. But without further ado, quick match, kind of a squash match, but it did serve a storyline purpose to move us forward and get us to watch NXT next week, in case if you were just checking in. We get a backstage segment. Josh Briggs walks up to Brooke Jensen and asks if he's sure about fighting Oba Femi next week. I would be too. Oba Femi is a beast, and I've watched his work and I've been very interested in it. So he's part of the NXT Next in Line program. But ultimately, he talks and warns him about fighting Femi. Then Dijak comes up, accuses Briggs of lying to his face, and sends us to break. And then back, Ilya Dragunov is interviewed backstage. He says, when you're NXT champion, you can't be surprised by anything. And he likes Tony D'Angelo. He's a man with vision. But he doesn't take any away from Carmelo Hayes and his athletic abilities. And he likes seeing him squirm a little bit. Channing Stacks, Hayes, and Luca come up. And in one way or another, Tony D will see him at Stand and Deliver. So then we're moving ahead to the Kabuki Warriors defending their NXT Championship women's titles against Lyra Valkyria and Tatum Paxley. So ultimately, we do get a little exposure here with the Kabuki Warriors bringing their tag team titles in. And so we have them actually coming in. We have a matchup. We have a lot of what you would expect from the Kabuki Warriors. But ultimately, we get Asuka in the ring acting a little crazy. We get Tatum out with a sliding knee right after, or some quick tags back and forth in the match. and then we get back, so commercial break in the middle of it, and then we come back, and Kairi Sane has an ankle lock, and it was just more or less kind of a way to move a little bit of NXT story forward, but it ends with the Kabuki Warriors winning a pinfall with a diving elbow, the Kairi Sane elbow, inverted DDT combination on Tatum Paxley, retaining the WWE Women's Tag Team Champion. So it was a little bit of a rub for the NXT girls on this one. So I did like a lot of the moves. There was just a lot of fun move sets in here. I was a little bit not overly into the match as much as some of the other things of the night. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst. But I do think it was great that the Kabuki Warriors were able to come down and kind of give a rub to the ladies down there and help them out a little bit. Post-match, we get Roxanne Perez hitting the ring, and she just lays out Lyra Valkyria with the divorce court before posting her into the turnbuckles a few times, bending her arm over the top rope, a double stomp. And then, back from commercial, we basically hear some footage of Shawn Michaels overseeing her being stretchered into an ambulance and driven off after this matchup. We get another impromptu match a little bit announced that night, which was Blair Davenport versus Fallon Henley. That came up next. Davenport immediately started with a side headlock. Henley reversed it to a key lock. We get a sliding leg pick, a big right hand, and some scissors leg press for a 1 and a 2. But ultimately, this match goes back and forth very quickly, and Henley sidesteps and Blair knees the steel steps. And then Sol Ruca returns with a cartwheel DDT off the barricade and throws her back inside, helping Fallon Henley win by pinfall with the sliding knee right to the face, as you see in the photo here. So ultimately, it was a quick matchup designed to promote Fallon Henley a little more, with Ruca coming back and making her return. This one, it didn't outstay its welcome, so I'm not going to get mad about it, but it really didn't do too much for me as far as the action in the ring. We then move ahead to the backstage segment, what was next. JC Jane is berating and getting on Andrew Chase and Duke Hudson for losing the match. Thea Hale comes up, excited about her brawl with Kiana James and Izzy Dane backstage, and says that she thinks it'll be a good tag match next week. And JC Jane says she's going to tag, and Hale says JC Jane says no, but that she's busy and she's got something else. And then we see a couple other little backstage segments, a little bit with Gigi Dolan in there. Gigi accepts, basically, they go back and forth, and then Eric kind of goes away. Shawn Spears is then interviewed also, and on his way out of the building, he talks some more cryptic messages about Ridge Holland. So we're going to have a little bit of an initial feud with that, and I think it's a good feud for Shawn to come back on. Ultimately then, we get in the ring, and we got William Regal making his surprise re-debut on NXT, and he is very welcomed back. And he interrupts a promo for the Heritage Cup with Charlie Dempsey, who is the current Heritage Cup holder. And William Regal talks about the history of the cup and what it means. And Dempsey says, I'll defend it even better and with more prestige than you ever could. Regal looks a little bit, says, fee, fi, fo, fum, I shall see. And so ultimately at this point then, that kind of ends. It's good to see that William Regal is finally getting to work with his son a little bit. That's the reason he left at AEW so suddenly. It was kind of an odd situation. I didn't trust it myself. But ultimately, he's back. He's going to help his son out, get started in NXT. I'll be kind of interested to see where this goes in the future. Hey guys, if you want to get in with another good group, fansofprowrestling.com, we actually do a lot of teamwork together. We do the Wrestling Fans Inside podcast, but there's so many more other podcasters that are there. Ted the Hillbilly Heel, Wrestling with the Truth. I just want to say a lot of great supporters of this channel, and I'm part of that team as well. So check us out, fansofprowrestling.com. And again, my tag mates, Carlos, Will, Heather, John. Let's all get in. And finally, guys, we got the NXT #1 Contender Championship. Tony D'Angelo, Carmelo Hayes, to take on the winner at Stand and Deliver, will go against a title match against Ilya Dragunov, or whoever the current champion is at that time. So, interesting choice and matchup. Most people have assumed that this would end up being Carmelo Hayes getting his title shot and rematch against Ilya Dragunov. But we're going to find out that's actually not the way that they decided to go here. And one of the things I noticed is we know Carmelo's the bigger star here, but when he got in the ring with Tony D, I realize that Tony D is a bigger guy than Carmelo, and he's got a little bit of size on him. But as we're watching, they have a pretty good matchup back and forth. So it's interesting that they decided to highlight Tony D on this random show. And I actually don't mind the fact that they're, again, training development. They're developing these new stars. Carmelo's already made, and Tony D is kind of getting a nod here to see if he's got something to him. But we get a lot of just back and forth in the ring. We get some spine busters. D'Angelo gets fired up. We hit some belly-to-belly moments. Hayes with a shoulder arm breaker, a couple kicks to an injured arm that he's been working on all match. And then we get a Fujiwara arm bar applied off the second when that doesn't really work. And D'Angelo catches him into a power bomb. And it's 1 and a 2. Ultimately, it come up for nothing but net. Trick Williams' music starts playing. And then at this point, we think Trick's there. And the crowd is chanting, "Whoop that Trick." But no, it's no Trick Williams. And then at this point, Carmelo starts smiling that his security scared him off, and it must have worked. But he turns around to Tony D'Angelo ready for him. And Tony comes out, he smashes and he hits Carmelo. And this is going to be the stand and deliver match of the night. I promise you guys that. This matchup is going to be huge, and it's been building for a while. And I will say this. At that point, we get Roadblock, we get the credits, and Roadblock goes off the air. But let's get into our final thoughts and talk about where Roadblock leads to Stand and Deliver. Alright guys, so I want to talk a little bit about Roadblock being the road to Stand and Deliver. Did it block anything? No, I mean, it was a random Tuesday night with a theme show. What it really did, though, the big story of the night was Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams' return, which now sets up a match between these two that will be built in the future weeks. And I'll say this, Trick Williams, I've said it once, I'll say it again, was my Rookie of the Year last year, but he also was, I feel, is going to be a bigger star than Carmelo Hayes will end up being when it's all said and done. Trick Williams has got the right size, he's good size, good build, he's got good action, he's got energy when he fights, and I like that a lot. So ultimately, whoop, that Trick is going to happen. So, this match doesn't need the title. So where does that leave the NXT title? Well, Ilya Dragunov is a strong champion for NXT. Now, he's going to have a little bit of a weaker opponent in Tony D'Angelo, and that doesn't necessarily get me excited. However, I do believe they could have a potential to put on, and prove me wrong, and put on a pretty good match between the two, and I think their styles might gel pretty well, and that's why NXT has decided to go with this match for Stand and Deliver. So I'll be interested to see kind of what happens, and do they deliver on that. Also, Shawn Spears debuting in as Shawn Spears and not Ty Dillinger, the Perfect 10, and NXT, and continuing his AEW work as the chairman here. And I feel like I'm going to be interested to see where that goes with that familiar face. So that was pretty much everything that stood out for me tonight. It's not really a show you needed to see, but if you really had to highlight it, Trick Williams comes back, sets up a lot of Stand and Deliver, and we get a little bit of a Shawn Spears taste of his new gimmick and character. But those are my final thoughts and results. I want to hear yours down below. Where do you think Stand and Deliver is going to go, and is it going to be exciting in a couple weeks on WrestleMania weekend? But without further ado, let's get out of here. And I just want to say thank you guys. Like, share, subscribe, and remember, it's not goodbye, it's just game over.